Ladies and gentlemen, we grow up being told that family is everything, that no matter what happens, blood is thick or thicker than water, that we owe our loyalty, our forgiveness, our presence, simply because of shared DNA. But what happens when family is the one who betrays us? What happens when the people who were supposed to protect us become the ones who wound us the most? Let's talk about it. Not in hushed tones or behind closed doors, but out in the open where truth has power, because betrayal by family doesn't just hurt, it shatters something sacred. It shakes the ground we stand on. It calls into question who we are, what we deserve, and whether we'll ever feel safe again. But I'm here to tell you, it's time to move on. And let me be clear, moving on is not bitterness. It's not shutting down your heart or building walls so high no one can reach you. It's choosing your peace over their approval. It's releasing the grip of stories that say, if I just try harder, they'll change. It's finally honoring your own worth, even when they couldn't. Moving on is an act of radical self-love. It's drawing a boundary not because you hate them, but because you've finally decided to love yourself more. It's mourning the fantasy of what they could have been, then walking forward with what is. It's grieving with your eyes open and healing with your heart intact. It's time. You are not a villain for choosing peace. You are not broken for walking away. You are not heartless for wanting to be whole. Betrayal hurts. But betrayal by family hits differently. It cuts deeper, not because the act itself is more vicious than others, but because of who commits it. From childhood, we are taught implicitly and explicitly that family is where we are safest. It's where our stories begin, where we are supposed to be known and loved regardless of our flaws. So when the people entrusted with our emotional well-being betray us through manipulation, abandonment, abuse, or neglect, the pain isn't just emotional, it's existential. It creates a rupture not just in our relationships, but in the very fabric of our identity. At its core, family is supposed to be a space of unconditional belonging. A place where we are accepted without needing to earn it. This sense of belonging is more than a warm feeling. It's a foundational part of how we understand ourselves. As children, we look to our family to reflect back our worth. Their voices become our inner voices. The reactions to our feelings shape how we respond to our own emotions. When that mirror is cracked, when those reflections are dismissive, cruel, or conditional, it distorts our understanding of ourselves. We start questioning if we are worthy of love at all. What makes betrayal by family so complex is the way it often gets dismissed. We are told to forgive and forget, to get over it, or to remember that they're still your family. But these narratives don't soothe the pain, they silence it. They imply that family ties should excuse harm and that speaking truthfully about familial wounds is disloyal or shameful. This creates a second betrayal, one from the culture around us, which often invalidates our experience in the name of preserving family unity. But what about preserving the person who was hurt? What about protecting the child, the sibling, the adult who finally found the courage to say, that wasn't okay? There's a word for what we seek in our closest relationships: attunement. This means being seen, heard, and emotionally understood. In a healthy family, attunement helps us build resilience. But when attunement is consistently missing, or worse, when emotional neglect or betrayal is repeated over time, it leaves a different imprint. We may grow up learning to distrust our own feelings. We may minimize our pain, convincing ourselves that it wasn't that bad, or that others have it worse. This coping mechanism is protective in the short term, but corrosive in the long run. It disconnects us from our own truth. And healing doesn't begin until that truth is finally acknowledged without shame or justification. Betrayal by family can also disrupt our ability to trust others. If the people who were supposed to love us most were unsafe, what does that say about everyone else? Many of us carry invisible armor into future relationships. Armor we didn't choose, but felt we had to wear. We become hypervigilant, guarded, overly accommodating, or emotionally withdrawn. Not because we're cold or broken, but because we were once vulnerable and it cost us dearly. This is the legacy of betrayal. It shapes how we see the world, how we love, and how we allow ourselves to be loved. And unless it's unpacked and processed, it quietly dictates our choices even decades later. What we often don't realize is that the pain of betrayal isn't a weakness. It's a testament to what we were hoping for. We hurt because we longed for connection, trust, and care. That longing was never wrong. It's human. The betrayal doesn't mean we were naive or foolish. It means we were brave enough to hope, to love, and to expect better. And while that hope may have been shattered, it doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. Naming the betrayal is not an act of resentment. It's an act of reclamation. It says, my pain matters. What happened to me matters. And from that place, real healing can begin. There is a common misconception that moving on from family after betrayal means you're angry, bitter, or holding a grudge, that you've hardened your heart, that you must be selfish or unforgiving. But the truth is, moving on is rarely rooted in resentment. It's more often rooted in self-preservation. It's not about carrying hate. It's about deciding you can't keep carrying pain that isn't yours to hold anymore. Moving on, in its truest form, is not an act of revenge. It's an act of reclaiming your right to emotional safety. We live in a culture that romanticizes forgiveness without accountability and worships reconciliation even when it comes at the expense of a person's mental health. Let it go. People say, as if healing is as simple as pretending the wound isn't there. But real healing isn't pretending. It's presence. It's feeling the full truth of what happened, giving yourself permission to name it honestly. And then slowly, intentionally choosing to release the power it holds over your daily life. And sometimes that release can only happen at a distance, not because you don't care, but because you care deeply about your peace, your mind, your future. Choosing peace over proximity doesn't make you cold. It makes you conscious. When you've been betrayed by someone close to you, being around them doesn't always feel neutral. Sometimes it reopens wounds. It reignites shame. It keeps you locked in a dynamic where you feel small, invisible, or chronically misunderstood. And when you've worked hard to grow, to heal, and to remember your worth, going back to a place where you have to fight for dignity isn't loving, it's re-traumatizing. Moving on then becomes a boundary between who you were and who you are becoming. One of the most radical things you can do after betrayal is to choose peace, even when no one validates your decision. You may not get an apology. You may not get closure. In fact, people may call you dramatic, sensitive, or disrespectful for creating distance. But here's the truth. You do not need permission to heal. You do not need consensus to honor what's right for your nervous system, your heart, or your spirit. If staying costs you your peace, that's too high a price, period. Peace in this context isn't just silence or space, it's the ability to breathe fully, to wake up without dread in your chest, to walk through your day without rehearsing old conversations in your head. It's the shift from emotional survival to emotional freedom. And that shift doesn't require bitterness. It requires boundaries. It requires courage. And it requires telling yourself the truth even when others don't want to hear it. This no longer serves me. I love myself too much to stay stuck here. To be clear, moving on doesn't mean you stop loving them. It doesn't mean you never think about them or grieve what could have been. It just means you've stopped trying to find safety in places that have shown you time and again that they can't offer it. It means you're done waiting for someone else to heal you. And that's not bitterness, that's power. It's reclaiming your right to live a life that is soft, safe, and honest, even if that life no longer includes everyone from your past. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: you can love someone and still need to protect yourself from them. Setting boundaries, especially with family, can feel like emotional treason. We are taught from a young age that loyalty to family means tolerance, no matter the cost. That to pull back, speak up, or say, this isn't okay, is somehow wrong. But here's the truth: of setting a boundary is not betrayal. It is an act of emotional responsibility. It is the moment you decide that your well-being matters just as much as theirs, maybe more, especially when they've shown they won't prioritize it themselves. Family systems often have unspoken rules. Don't rock the boat. Don't talk about what hurts. Keep the peace at all costs. But what happens when the peace only exists because you've silenced yourself? What happens when keeping the peace means internal war? The truth is, many people equate silence with love. But love without honesty is not connection, it's compliance. And boundaries are how we break out of that cycle. They are not walls to keep people out. They are doors that teach others how to enter our lives with care, with respect, and with accountability. There's a misconception that boundaries are aggressive or punitive. But boundaries are not about punishment. They are about clarity. They say, this is what I will accept. This is what I won't. And this is what happens if that line is crossed. It doesn't mean you love the person any less. It means you finally love yourself enough to no longer abandon your own needs in service of their comfort. When you've experienced betrayal, especially from people who should have been your protectors, boundaries become a form of healing. They give you the space to redefine what safety means to you. Setting boundaries with family is often met with resistance. You might be told you're selfish, ungrateful, overreacting. You may be guilted with phrases like, but we're family, as if blood justifies harm. But loyalty that demands your silence, your emotional labor, and your constant forgiveness isn't loyalty, it's control. And the moment you stop participating in that unspoken contract, you will be tested. But that test doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're finally choosing truth over tradition, wholeness over harmony. And that's not wrong. It's revolutionary. Many of us were never taught to name our needs. We were conditioned to anticipate others, especially in dysfunctional family dynamics. We became peacemakers, fixers, caretakers. Roles that taught us our value was in how little we asked for. But boundaries are the unlearning of that message. They say, I am not here just to absorb pain. I am here to live. And living fully requires limits. It requires having the courage to say, I will not keep paying the emotional bill for someone else's unhealed wounds. That's not being disloyal. That's being conscious. It's time to normalize something radical. You can love someone from afar. You can wish someone well and still not allow them into the sacred spaces of your life. You can forgive and still choose not to reconcile. You can walk away without hatred, just clarity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and the person who hurt you is to set a boundary. It's not the easy path, but it is the path toward healing, self-respect, and emotional maturity. You are allowed to draw a line, not because you're cruel, but because you finally understand what it means to be kind to yourself. One of the most painful parts of healing from family betrayal is realizing that you weren't just grieving what happened. You were grieving what never happened. You were mourning the parent who never protected you, the sibling who never saw you, the relative who never showed up in the way you needed. This kind of grief is complicated because it doesn't come with a clear moment of loss. It's a slow, aching realization they were never going to become the version of them you kept hoping for. Letting go of that fantasy is heartbreaking, but it's also the beginning of emotional freedom. We often cling to the idea of what someone could be if they just tried harder, if they got help, if they stopped drinking, if they apologized, if they saw things our way. This kind of hope can keep us emotionally stuck for years, sometimes decades. It's not that hope is bad, it's that hope without evidence becomes a trap. It keeps us chasing a version of a person who only exists in our imagination. And while it's okay to wish things had been different, it becomes harmful when we start bargaining with reality, denying what's been repeatedly shown to us. They are who they are, not who we want them to be. This letting go doesn't happen overnight. It often starts as a quiet internal shift, a moment when you stop defending their behavior, a pause before you respond to that text, a deeper breath before you return that call, and then slowly clarity creeps in. Not because you've stopped loving them, but because you've started loving yourself enough to see things clearly. You realize you've been holding space for someone who never truly held space for you. And you ask yourself the hardest question of all: what would it look like to stop waiting for them to change? We often stay in unhealthy family dynamics because of this deep rooted fantasy. We think, maybe if I just explain it better this time, or maybe this holiday will be different. We rewrite the narrative every time we get hurt, hoping for a different outcome. But healing asks for something more courageous than hope. It asks for acceptance, not approval, not agreement. Just the grounded, honest truth: this person is not emotionally safe. They may never be. And holding out for the day they finally become who you need them to be is only prolonging your suffering. Letting go of the fantasy isn't cruel, it's compassionate, because it creates space for grief, yes, but also for reality. And once you're living in reality, you can finally make choices that support your healing instead of sabotaging it. You stop watering dead plants. You stop waiting for love in places that can't offer it. And in doing so, you open up to the people, experiences, and relationships that can. You stop trying to be enough for someone who never saw your worth, and you start surrounding yourself with people who do. There is no shame in having hoped. That hope came from a deep desire to feel safe, seen, and loved, 3 of the most fundamental human needs. But the version of them you created it in your mind, the version who would finally come around and meet you with empathy, maturity, and remorse, doesn't exist. And holding on to that version keeps you tethered to pain. It's okay to let that dream die. It's okay to grieve it like a loss, because it is a loss. And once you let it go, you create space to build a life grounded in truth, a not illusion, a life that's finally your own. When you're betrayed by family, it's natural to internalize that wound as a reflection of your worth. You may begin to wonder, if something about you made the betrayal happen, if you were too difficult, too sensitive, too flawed to deserve better. This is especially true when the betrayal isn't acknowledged or when you're blamed for the fallout. But here's the truth, even if it's hard to accept at first, what they did or didn't do is not a mirror of your value. It's a mirror of their capacity, and their failure to see your worth doesn't make you unworthy. It makes them unqualified to define you. Self-worth is not something other people are supposed to hand to us, but many of us were raised to believe it is. If your family only showed love when you succeeded, stayed quiet, or met their emotional needs, you may have learned to tie your value to performance or compliance. Over time, you start to believe that love must be earned. So when betrayal happens, it confirms what you feared deep down, that you must not be enough. This is the lie that betrayal breeds. And unlearning it requires deep, intentional work. It means rebuilding your sense of worth from the inside out, often without external validation. The turning point comes when you realize that self-worth isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet and consistent. It's the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. It's the boundaries you hold even when people don't like them. It's the decisions you make that say, I matter, even when someone else tries to convince you that you don't. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's sacred, especially when you come from a family that trained you to make everyone else's needs more important than your own. Reclaiming your worth is a rebellion against every message that told you to stay small. One of the most powerful acts of healing is to stop waiting for an apology, for recognition, or for someone to finally say, you were right and you didn't deserve that. As comforting as those words would be, your healing cannot depend on someone else's awakening. Why? Because you may never get it. Some people will spend their entire lives avoiding accountability. And if your worth is held hostage by their ability to take responsibility, then you remain in emotional limbo, forever waiting. True self-worth says, I can choose myself even if you never do. This choice, to believe in your own worth, isn't a one-time event. It's a daily practice. Especially in the aftermath of family betrayal, you'll be tested. You may have moments of doubt, moments where you're tempted to go back, moments where you feel like the problem was you. But each time you return to yourself with gentleness, each time you remind yourself that you're not broken, you're healing, you build something stronger. You build self-trust. And that trust becomes your foundation when everything else feels uncertain. Self-worth doesn't make the pain disappear, but it gives the pain a new context. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? You begin to ask, what happened to me? And how do I care for that part of me now? That question is the beginning of freedom. It turns your attention inward, where your real power lies. You don't need anyone else's permission to see your value. You get to decide, I am worthy because I exist. I am enough because I choose to believe it. That decision, quiet, firm, and unshakable, is how you begin to move on with your head held high. When we think of family, we often think of blood ties, shared histories, and unbreakable bonds. But the truth is, family is not just who we're born into, it's also who we choose. Especially after betrayal by biological family, the idea of family can shift dramatically. Healing often begins not by clinging to those broken ties, but by creating new connections with people who see us, respect us, and hold space for our healing. This chosen family can become a sanctuary, a place where we are loved for who we truly are, not for who we were expected to be. This concept can feel both freeing and daunting. freeing because it opens the possibility of belonging beyond the narrow definition of blood relations. Daunting because it requires courage to seek connection outside of familiar, though painful, patterns. It asks us to reimagine what family looks like. Maybe it's friends who become siblings, mentors who become parents, partners who become anchors. These relationships don't replace our history, but they can heal it. They remind us that belonging isn't about genetics. It's about acceptance and care. Choosing family means taking responsibility for your own emotional ecosystem. It means surrounding yourself with people who uplift you, who challenge you to grow, and who offer you safety. It means investing time and energy in relationships that feel reciprocal and nourishing. After betrayal, this is radical self-love. It says, I deserve connection that doesn't come at the cost of my dignity or peace. It acknowledges that not all ties are sacred just because they are old or given. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is to loosen those ties and invest in new ones that honor our growth. Building chosen family also requires vulnerability. It means showing up authentically and risking rejection, knowing that some people won't stay. But it also means being willing to let go of those who harm us, even if they are relatives. This is not about severing every connection, but about prioritizing your well-being. It's about defining family on your own terms, by the quality of love and respect, not the quantity of shared memories or genetics. In doing so, you reclaim your narrative and create a community that supports your journey toward wholeness. For many, chosen family becomes the foundation for rewriting what love looks like. It becomes a safe place to practice trust, to make mistakes, and to heal old wounds. These relationships teach us that family can be a verb, not just a noun. Family is what we do, how we listen, how we show up, how we protect and nurture each other. This is especially important after betrayal, when our original family may have failed to provide those things. Chosen family can be the balm for those wounds, a living proof that connection and love are still possible. At its heart, choosing family is an act of hope. It is a declaration that despite the pain inflicted by those we once trusted most, we believe in the possibility of love that is honest, steady, and healing. It reminds us that family isn't just where we come from. It's where we find belonging, purpose, and home. And sometimes finding that family means stepping away from the ones we were born into in order to step fully into the ones we choose. In closing, moving on after betrayal by family is not about erasing the past or forgetting the pain. It's about honoring your own journey toward healing and wholeness. It's about reclaiming your power to choose peace, to set boundaries, and to embrace a new definition of family, one rooted in love, respect, and authenticity. Remember, your worth is not determined by those who failed to see it, but by the strength it takes to walk away and choose yourself. Healing is not linear, and it is not easy, but it is possible. And as you step forward, may you carry with you the courage to let go, the grace to forgive, not for them, but for your own freedom, and the hope that you will create a life filled with true belonging, chosen family, and genuine love.